They never called her a failure outright. They didn't need to. It was in the way her mother always served her brother first, in the way her father introduced him as our shining doctor, in the way her name was only mentioned with a sigh. What they didn't know was this. One night in the mountains of Montana, in a collapsing cabin swallowed by flames, a stranger's life was placed in her hands, and she didn't run. She ran into the fire. Danielle Carter had once believed that love was loud, that approval came in cheers, in praise, in birthday cakes with her name spelled correctly. But in her family, silence said more than words. Growing up, it was her little brother Bryce who shone. Star athlete, debate champ, medical school golden boy. Danielle? She played defense quietly. She didn't chase awards, she chased smoke. By the time she turned 22, Danielle had already pulled 3 people from burning buildings. She thought maybe, just maybe, that would mean something. But at the family dinner table, all anyone asked was whether Bryce had heard back from Johns Hopkins. Danielle joined the fire department in a small Montana town called Bridger. It wasn't glamorous. The station was old, the gear outdated, and her boots often had holes by the end of winter. But the people? They mattered. Every siren she responded to carried someone's story. A mother screaming for her child. A man clutching a wedding ring, refusing to leave his wife behind. Danielle didn't talk much about work at home, partly because no one asked, mostly because she was tired of explaining why her uniform didn't have a stethoscope. There was one call she remembered above all. It was early fall, 2017. A cabin had caught fire just outside Bridger. Electrical short, wood stove failure, a perfect storm. Inside, 8 people. Danielle made it in through a busted back window. She couldn't see anything. Smoke filled her lungs. The floor creaked like it was about to snap. And then she heard a voice. Faint, male, close. She followed the sound, hands stretched out, crawling. There was a man, barely conscious, wedged beneath a support beam. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. She screamed into her mask, "Stay with me!" and dragged him out. Flames chased her through the doorway, exploding behind her just as her knees hit the dirt. The paramedics told her later the man's name was Everett Lynn. He survived. Danielle didn't remember much after that. She woke up 3 days later, her left arm wrapped in layers of gauze, skin scorched to the bone. She had third-degree burns and nerve damage so severe she couldn't even hold a spoon for months. Her family didn't visit. Not once. No phone call. No flowers. Just a single text from Bryce. "Glad you're okay. Let us know if you're ever back in Montana." She never replied. Danielle recovered slowly. She left the department quietly, no send-off, no ceremony, just mailed her badge from a tiny post office in Texas. Now she lived in Austin, teaching survival skills to teens. She rented a 1-bedroom apartment above a mechanic shop. She drank too much coffee. She didn't own a television, but her students adored her. One group even gave her a birthday gift, a charred old stock pot painted in neon green. "Thanks for teaching us how not to die," it said. It made her laugh. It also made her cry. Back in Houston, Bryce was thriving. Dr. Bryce Carter, chief resident, the golden boy who still wore suits to family dinners. At one such dinner, Danielle showed up out of politeness. She brought a bottle of wine. Her mother handed it to the caterer without saying thank you. "You look tired, sweetie," she said instead. Later that night, Bryce made a toast about discipline and ambition. He didn't mention Danielle, not once. Months later, Danielle got a formal invitation to a charity gala. It was for emergency services workers. She assumed it was a mistake. She hadn't worn a dress in years, didn't know where her heels were. Still, something told her to go. She stood at the edge of the room, quiet, alone. That's when it happened. A man in a silver suit, gray hair, and a faint scar near his temple stepped forward. His eyes widened. You were there. Bridger, the fire, 2017. Danielle froze. He took another step. "You screamed through your mask, didn't you? Stay with me. That was you." The whole room turned. Forks stopped clinking. Conversations died. "My God," he whispered, "you saved my life." Danielle didn't speak. She didn't need to. Everett Lynn, now a hospital executive, walked to the microphone. He looked out across the room. "I want to thank the heroes in medicine," he said. Then he paused. "But tonight I also want to thank a different kind of hero." He gestured toward her. "Danielle Carter is here. She saved me, and then she disappeared. No spotlight, no interviews, but I remember." The room erupted in applause. Bryce's face paled. Danielle's mother blinked as if seeing her daughter for the first time. In that moment, Danielle didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. Not for what she wore, not for what she earned, but for what she survived. The fire hadn't left her. It had become her. And this time she wasn't going to disappear, not again. Danielle didn't remember the drive home after the gala. She walked into her apartment, closed the door behind her, and just stood there. Shoes still on, hair still pinned, heart still racing. For the first time in years, someone had said her name out loud, with pride. And not just anyone. The man she had dragged from fire and death had remembered her. Not just the moment, but the eyes, her voice, her strength. She wasn't invisible. Not anymore. But with recognition came something else. Weight. Questions. Family. Later that week, her mother called. The voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Sweetheart, we were surprised," she said. "I mean, proud too. Everyone's been talking." She paused. "Oh, your uncle said even the Sunday paper mentioned your name. Why don't you come to dinner this weekend? Bryce will be there. We want to hear more about your story." Danielle leaned against the kitchen counter. There was something different in her mother's voice, but not entirely pure. Under the warmth was a tone Danielle knew too well. Need. She went anyway. She wore the same navy blue blouse she'd worn for job interviews. Nothing flashy. No medals. No signs of fire. Just her. Inside the house, everything was arranged. Neatly. Purposefully. Every armchair, every tray of crackers. Like a reunion disguised as an ambush. Her brother Bryce greeted her with that same smooth charm he'd always had. "Hey, sis," he smiled. "Heard you made the papers. About time." He hugged her. She didn't hug back. At dinner, the table buzzed with praise. Everyone talked about how amazing it all was. The fire, the rescue, the award. Danielle listened, nodding, her spoon slow in the bowl of soup. Then her mother leaned in. "You still have the money, right?" she asked. Danielle froze. Her mother smiled, too sweet. "We were thinking, Bryce's research proposal could use some funding, something meaningful. Just a portion, dear." Across the table, Bryce added quickly, "It's just a grant match. A small contribution could go a long way." Danielle's hands stilled. Not a word about the recovery, not a word about the burns, just the money, just the glory. She put the spoon down. Later that week, she got a knock at the door. It was Bryce. No call, no warning. He stood in the hallway, suit slightly wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. "I need your help," he said. Danielle stepped aside. Inside, he broke down. "I messed up," he admitted. "Vegas, private poker. I thought I could win it back. Then I borrowed. It snowballed." Danielle sat still, barely blinking. "I owe over 120 grand, he said. "I could lose my residency." He leaned forward. "They'll ruin me, and if it leaks, it'll follow your name too." There it was again, the twist, the trap. "You want me to give you 50,000? She asked. "I'll pay you back," he said quickly. "Once I land the neurology award." Danielle stood. That night, she sat on the couch, the old newspaper clipping in her lap. "Firefighter saves 8, collapses after final rescue." The photo was black and white, slightly blurred, but the face was clear. Ash-streaked, kneeling, alive. She remembered that woman. She missed that woman. She folded the article back up and tucked it away. The next few days were quiet. No more knocks, no more texts. Then came the calls. But they weren't from Bryce. A cousin reached out about a gym app that needed angel funding. An uncle asked if Danielle wanted to invest in a community center near his home. A woman who claimed to work with Bryce's wellness nonprofit said they were looking for silent investors. They all said, "Congratulations." They all said she was inspiring. And then they all asked for money. 10,000, 20, 50. Little seeds, they said, just small gestures. Danielle sat on her kitchen floor, legs pulled to her chest, the smell of burnt lavender still in the air. They didn't see her. They saw what she had. A week later, she walked into her parents' house again. She hadn't planned to, but this time it wasn't dinner. It was an intervention. The living room was staged. Aunts, uncles, cousins she hadn't seen since high school, even the pastor who'd married her parents. And then one unfamiliar face, a man in a blazer. He had a leather folder and a business card that read, Estate Planning and Crisis Strategy. Her father stood first. "You know, Bryce has always made us proud," he began. "But now this mistake, this issue, it could end his career." Danielle crossed her arms. "What about me?" she asked. The room blinked. "Has anyone here ever asked what I needed, what I gave up, what it cost me to survive what I did?" Silence. Her father looked away. Danielle nodded. "We know he spent in me." She reached into her bag and handed Bryce a check. 50,000. He blinked. "You're an angel," he said. She didn't answer. That night, Danielle stood in front of her bathroom mirror. She whispered to herself, "You're not an angel. You're a fool." She closed her eyes. Then she slept. Deeply. For the first time in weeks. But 10 days later, it unraveled. It started with an Instagram post. Bryce, shirt open, sunglasses on, drink in hand, at a private rooftop pool. The caption, "Hard work pays off." Danielle stared at the screen. Her jaw tightened. She typed a message. One sentence. "Next time, don't trade tears for cash. They've lost their value." Then she blocked his number. Not out of anger, out of clarity. But silence didn't last. The internet stirred, Reddit threads popped up, blog posts followed, a regional tabloid ran the story. From hero to heartless, firefighter refuses to save her brother. Her photo was everywhere. Ash on her face, helmet off, eyes hollow. Students at her training center began to drop out. Parents pulled their kids. Sponsors paused funding. Danielle had given everything to protect people. And now her story was being used to destroy her. One night, she heard glass shatter. Her living room window. She ran out. The safe was open. Papers were gone. On the floor, a note, scrawled in angry ink. "If you don't know how to share, someone else will decide for you." The police came. They asked about enemies. But Danielle already knew. The next morning, an email arrived. Subject line, "We owe you more than just a medal." It was from Everett Lynn. They met at a cafe with chipped mugs and wobbly chairs. He looked tired, kind, grateful. Danielle sat across from him. Everett slid a folder across the table. Inside was everything. Security footage of Bryce, letting a man into her building, bank statements forged in her name, a digital trail tracing the smear campaign to Bryce's hospital laptop. Danielle stared. Then she closed the folder. She went home, took a photo of the court summons, typed one sentence, posted it. Sometimes you have to let the forest burn so new seeds can grow. Within minutes, likes flooded in. But only one comment mattered. It was from Everett. "This fire, you lit it for yourself. Let it rise." The courthouse was colder than she expected. Fall mornings in Austin usually clung to the last heat of summer. But this one felt different. Sharp. Still. Danielle wore a navy suit. Not tailored, just clean. Hair tied back. No makeup. No mask. In her hand, a slim binder. Inside, proof, evidence, and the remains of everything her brother had torched. The courtroom filled slowly. Lawyers, journalists, a few curious faces from the hospital, even a couple of her students' parents. Bryce entered, flanked by his attorney. He didn't look at her. For once, his jaw wasn't cocky. His tie wasn't straight. He looked cornered, and he was. The prosecutor spoke first. They played the voicemail threats. Bryce's voice, tight and furious. They showed payment slips with forged signatures. Ducky Moore Shear. Then the edited transfer forms. Monday shear. The roadie. The surveillance footage of Bryce letting a man into Danielle's apartment. The murmurs in the room grew louder with each slide. A low, "My God," escaped a woman near the back. Danielle didn't flinch. Then came the investigator's report. Bryce hadn't just targeted Danielle. He'd created fake grant requests, fabricated wellness campaigns, used Danielle's name as a shield. At least 5 other families had been misled. 2 had drained savings. Danielle stared ahead. She could feel her mother's breath shaking behind her. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak before sentencing, Danielle stood slowly. The room stilled. "I don't want my brother in prison," she said, "but I do want truth to matter." She paused. Not because of revenge, but because of justice, because people need to know what harm looks like, especially when it wears a familiar face. Then she sat back down. No tears, no cracks, just truth. Outside, the wind had picked up. As Danielle stepped onto the courthouse stairs, a woman approached her. Gray suit, clipboard, a calm smile. "Miss Carter, I represent a National Education Foundation. We read about your training work and your story." Danielle blinked. "We'd like to help you expand. Bring your programs to underserved areas, starting in rural Texas." Danielle didn't speak. Not yet. That night, she opened what remained of the $300,000 award. What was left after rehab, after survival, after her family's needs bled her bank account dry. She looked at the number, then at the program outline in front of her. She made a decision. The center would be called The Ember. Some small, resilient, burning quietly for those who needed it most. Weeks passed. At first, she didn't think the community, but they did. Slowly. A mother dropped off a tray of cookies and whispered, "I'm sorry." I believed the headlines. One of her students ran up during a class and hugged her tightly. "Miss Danielle," he said, "I want to be a firefighter like you." That did it. Her heart cracked. Not from pain, but from something else, repair. And then Everett Lynn returned. He showed up with breakfast sandwiches and, of all things, a portable fire pit. "I want to build something with you," he said. "Not a company, not a mission, something real. A life that keeps us warm, one we don't have to run from." Danielle didn't answer right away. She just took his hand. No promises, no performance, just a quiet yes. Later that week, Danielle found a letter in her mailbox. No return address, no stamp. It was from her parents. No excuses, just 7 words scribbled in her mother's careful handwriting. "We understand now. You made us proud." Danielle folded it gently and placed it in the same drawer as the old photo. The one of her in uniform, ash across her cheek, eyes filled with smoke and fight. The next day, a reporter reached out. They wanted to do a segment on her life. Firefighter turned educator, fall, rise, redemption. She agreed. And when the camera caught her face, there were no shadows, no shame, just her, fully seen. And that's when she realized, what we survive doesn't define us. What we choose to become after does. Maybe the greatest act of courage isn't just walking into fire. It's walking out, carrying your own name, even when no one clapped. Even when they looked the other way. The Ember Center opened quietly. No ribbon cutting, no mayor's handshake. Just Danielle, a stack of folding chairs, and a group of teens eager to learn how not to panic when things went wrong. And that, she realized, was enough. Some days, they practiced how to exit a burning building blindfolded. Some days, they learned how to build a fire without matches. How to find clean water in the wild. How to stay calm when the world spun sideways. Danielle didn't talk much about her past. She didn't need to. Her scars said plenty. Then one afternoon, while prepping first aid kits, a familiar name appeared on her phone screen. Bryce. She didn't answer, but she didn't block him either. A few days later, a letter arrived. It wasn't from him. It was from her old fire captain in Bridger. The department was honoring the 10-year anniversary of the 2017 cabin fire. They wanted Danielle to attend. She stared at the envelope for a long time. It smelled faintly of dust and pine. Or maybe that was memory. She almost said no. But something in her shifted, not out of nostalgia, out of truth. She didn't need to be celebrated, but she was tired of hiding. The flight to Montana was quiet, Snow kissed the mountaintops. The trees looked exactly the same, like nothing had ever changed, except her. The ceremony was held in the community gym. The crowd wasn't big. Local families, retired firefighters, a few old friends who hadn't seen her in nearly a decade. When Danielle stepped up to speak, she didn't have a speech, just a small slip of paper in her jacket pocket with a single sentence. Sometimes the fire changes you. That's okay. She read it aloud, then folded it. Afterward, a woman approached her. She looked vaguely familiar. Tired eyes, a slow smile. You pulled my father out that night, she said. He didn't make it past the next year, but we got one more Christmas, one more story. That was because of you. Danielle blinked. Then she hugged the woman. Not out of duty, out of something softer, healing. That night she stayed in a tiny rental cabin outside of town. Wood stove, one lamp, no Wi-Fi, just silence. She lit a small fire, not to warm the space, but to remind herself she wasn't afraid of it anymore. Then came the knock. It was late, cold. She opened the door slowly. It was Bryce. Hair longer, eyes worn, not the same man who toasted champagne while asking for $50,000. He didn't smile. He held out an envelope. I signed it, he said. Danielle opened it. It was a formal agreement. Bryce had waived any claim to the remaining grant funds, any future stake in the Ember Center, and any inheritance claims from her personal accounts. She stared at the paper, then at him. Why now? She asked. He swallowed. Because I ruined the only bridge that ever mattered. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I wanted you to know I know. Danielle leaned against the doorway. Do you regret what you did? She asked. Yes, he said quickly, then softer. Every day. She nodded once. Not a yes, not a no, just a breath. He turned to leave. Bryce, she called quietly. He stopped. She stepped outside and handed him something. It was a photo. Their whole family. Before everything. When they still smiled the same. Burn it or keep it, she said. Just stop rewriting it. Back in Austin, the Ember Center grew. A local news station did a feature. Volunteers showed up. A young firefighter offered to help teach. Her name was Jordan. She had the same quiet fire Danielle once carried at 22. Danielle saw herself in her. And something else. Hope. One night, Everett cooked dinner. It was terrible. Burnt pasta, overcooked chicken. Danielle laughed so hard, she nearly cried. This is worse than cafeteria chili, she teased. He raised his wine glass. To the disasters that don't kill us, she clinked hers. To the ones that teach us. That evening, Danielle scrolled through her inbox. A message caught her eye. Subject line. You inspired more than just us. Inside was a photo. A group of teenage girls in Kansas. Wearing Ember Center shirts. Learning CPR from one of Danielle's old students. At the bottom was a note. We thought you should know the fire spread, and it's saving lives. Danielle looked out the window. The city lights flickered like stars. She closed the laptop, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel burned out. She felt lit up from the inside. It didn't happen overnight, but the story stopped being just about survival. It started becoming something else. Something solid. Something fireproof. Danielle stopped waiting for apologies. Stopped trying to explain things to people who didn't want to understand. Her work spoke louder than any headline. Her students, louder than any donation. And the quiet that used to ache now felt like peace. One Saturday, while sweeping the Ember Center floors after class, Danielle noticed a package by the front door. No return label. Inside, a blackened firefighter's helmet. Hers, the same one from the 2017 Bridger fire. Cleaned, restored, still dented, still real. There was a sticky note tucked under the strap. You never lost it, you just stopped wearing it. No signature, but she knew who sent it. Later that month, the Ember Center hosted its first regional training camp. Over 200 teens, volunteers, trainers from 6 states. Everett gave the opening remarks. Jordan handled logistics. Danielle stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, just watching. A girl walked over, 16, freckles, nervous energy. "You're Miss Danielle, right?" she asked. Danielle smiled. "I am. My dad says you saved a guy from a fire and didn't tell anyone. He says that's real courage." Danielle paused, then knelt. "You know what real courage is?" she said. The girl leaned in. "Getting up after you're burned and still choosing to care." That night, Everett lit a small campfire for the trainers. They passed around cocoa, told stories, laughed like kids. At one point, Danielle looked up. The sky was wide, endless. No sirens, no whispers, just stars. Then her phone buzzed. A number she hadn't seen in a while. Her father. She stepped away and answered. His voice was slower, older. "I just wanted to say, we're proud of you." Danielle didn't say anything at first. Then she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Silence. Then he added, "I'm sorry it took fire to see you clearly." Danielle exhaled, not out of anger, not out of relief, just release. A month later, the Ember Center received a grant from the state, enough to build 2 new wings. One would be named after Danielle's late captain. The other, Carter Hall. She laughed when the plaque arrived. Not because of the name, but because for once, it didn't feel ironic. It felt earned. Everett asked her to marry him in the least dramatic way possible. He didn't kneel. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. They were doing dishes. "I think we should build something permanent," he said. Danielle, up to her elbows in suds, turned. "You're talking about a cabin or a ring?" she asked, grinning. He smiled. "Both." She laughed and said yes. They didn't plan a wedding. They planned a life. Shared keys, built shelves, taught kids how to light fires and not fear them. At the first staff retreat, Danielle handed each volunteer a patch. Embroidered across it, "We carry heat, we give light." They wore them with pride. And then one morning, years later, a girl showed up early to class. She handed Danielle a letter. Inside was a photo, a graduation cap, a pair of soot-stained gloves. "I got into the fire academy," the note said. "I wouldn't have without you." Danielle looked up, blinked hard. "You just changed someone's life," Everett said behind her. She shook her head. "No." I reminded her that she already could. In time, people stopped asking if she regretted leaving the fire department. They stopped calling her a former firefighter because she never really left the flames. She just learned how to control them, how to teach others to walk through heat and not come out broken, but burning stronger. At the very end of a documentary about the Ember Center, Danielle is sitting on a bench. A breeze moves her hair. The camera zooms in slowly. She smiles and says, "I used to think courage meant running into fire. Now I think it means staying whole after you come back out." Then the screen fades to black. If you've ever felt like your story didn't matter, that you weren't seen or praised or celebrated, this is your reminder. Sometimes the fire is the beginning, not the end. Let it light you, not consume you. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and drop a comment about a moment in your life when you chose to rise. We read every word. You matter here. You're not alone. Thanks for walking with us through the fire. See you in the next one.